Good morning and happy Hanukkah. Today we study the portion of by Miketz, and we're studying the first Sikha, the first talk of the Rebbe that appears in the book Selections from Likutei Sichos. I want to read a little bit. I would like to read a little bit and share with you by heart. Okay. So on page 511.
511.
In the beginning of Parshas Miketz, the Torah speaks of Pharaoh's dreams. Similarly, Parshas Vayeshev, the previous week's Torah portion, speaks of dreams. Those of Yosef and Pharaoh's chief butler and chief baker. All of these dreams were contributing factors leading to the exile in Egypt, the root of all exiles. Since everything takes place as a result of divine providence, it follows logically that the result, exile, shows a connection with the resemblance of and resembles the contributing factor of dreams. So what do we study? If you pay attention to the text, you find that every start of movement towards the exile, which is the mother of all exiles, Egypt, as we'll see again later, starts with dreams. Yosef dreams about bowing down to him. When he goes to visit them, it says, here is the dreamer that's coming. Let's see what happens to his dreams. Later on, how does he go out of the dungeon? Because he interpreted the dreams to the butler and the baker. How does Pharaoh learns about Yosef? Because he had dreams, two dreams. Each one of them had two dreams. There are a pair of dreams. The fact that dreams are stepping stones to reach Galut, exile, is because there is a similarity between dreams and exile. And here the Rebbe is explaining. As explains in various sources, including Torah Or, which we will begin, God willing, in January to study. The following is based on Torah Or, the Alter Rebbe. Torah Or explains that dreams stem from the power of imagination, which has the capacity for two opposites to coexist simultaneously. For example, if a person thought about the matter beforehand, he could even dream about seeing an elephant fit through the needle's hole. The Gemara has a phrase regarding dreamers that you can dream about an elephant, the largest of animals, fitting into the needle hole and going through it. In other words, it makes no sense. Physically, it's impossible, but in a dream, it's all possible. So you take two opposites and you can put them together in a dream. Exile, that's dreaming. Exile allow for contradictions of similar nature. A person may think that he loves God, and at the same time, it he will love his own body and indulge its desires. Even though these two loves cannot exist simultaneously, a person can live with such an internal dichotomy to the extent that despite his professed love for God, he can, as explained elsewhere, be engulfed by his physical desires and even violate God's will. So in exile, you have just like a dream. You have two opposites. You have a man who says, I love God, and he's dedicated to God, and he does what God is asking, and he's investing in serving God. And at the same time, he's invested in his body, and he cares about his body, and he does things for the sake of his body's indulgence, which are opposite the way God wants. How those two opposites can happen? Only in exile. Torah all continues explaining that such internal contradictions are consistent with the state of exile. For example, the fact that after prayer a person may act in the opposite manner that he resolved during prayer should not be taken as proof that his prayer, Torah study, and performance of mitzvot are worthless. This is not true. Instead, such a possibility results because exile is comparable to a dream state, just as the source of a dream is from a very high source, one so transcended in nature that it allows for the coexistence of opposites, so too similar transcended source shines forth specifically in the era of exile. And therefore, says the Rebbe, and you can learn more about that, says the Alter Rebbe in Torah Or, in exile, God shines upon us a very powerful light, energy. And that powerful light is akin to dreams. In dreams, when a person dreams, his soul went up to heaven to a very high source, much higher than when it's in the body. And therefore, physical limitations do not confine the imagination of the human. Therefore, he can see two opposites. He can see a huge elephant going through a needle hole, which is a nano inch. Same is when it comes to exile. A Jew can pray or study Torah and resolve to serve God and do its purpose in life the way what he was sent by God. And right after prayer, he goes and indulges himself in opposite. Why? It doesn't mean, that's the point the Rabbi wants to clarify. The fact that it happens does not make an indication that when he prayed, he was faking it, that it was not true. That's not true. He is not a faker. He is not someone who, what do you call someone who's two-faced? A two-faced person. That's totally hypocrite. He's not hypocrite. When he studied Torah, he was dedicated to God. When he prayed, he is serving God wholeheartedly, 100%. When he goes the opposite, that's already different. That's already a different state. Just like an elephant fit into a needle hole. So far, so good? Says the Rebbe. To explain it a little further, here is a summary of the Rebbe is going to say. The Rebbe says that to explain it a little further, the difference between evil doing versus holy activity is holiness is permanent because it's connected for God. It came from God. So when I pray to God or I study Torah, the connection established is permanent. When one person commits a sin, he is connecting to the evil forces. We call it the other side, or in Aramaic, Sitra Achra. Sitra Achra, other side. That connection is not permanent, it's temporary, because the whole existence of Sitra Achra is temporary. What happens when God will shine forth in the universe when Mashiach will arrive? It says, he will remove, eradicate all of the evil spirits from the earth. And therefore, the fact that it's not permanent, it's temporary. Because it's temporary, there is no contrast, there is no war between the two. Because one, I connect permanently forever. The other, I connect only temporarily. Because what happens if I do teshuvah? It's gone. That connection is severed. What happens when Mashiach will come? We all do teshuvah. We all come back to God. Therefore, says the Rebbe, between the two, which one is fake? Which one is inappropriate? The sin, because it's temporary. Whatever I did a mitzvah or I studied Torah in dedicated time to serve God, it's permanent. It's connected forever. Says the Rebbe, even in a case where the Torah tells us about a human being that is so connected to evil that his entire soul is taken by the evil soul, and he shouldn't be studying Torah because his Torah study and his prayer are giving energy to the evil forces. There is a situation where someone is eradicated all good, and everything he does is connected to evil. Even such a person, the Alter Rebbe says that we should, so to say, try to encourage them to do good, to study Torah, to pray. Why? Because one day God will eradicate evil, and that complete all of his Torah study and mitzvot will be untied from evilness and return back to godly. That's the idea that exists only in exile, because exile is exactly what a dream is about. You have two opposites and you enjoy the show. Says the Rebbe, this is not only for the revealed part of the Torah, but also the hidden part of the Torah. We call it Kabbalah. In other words, if you live in reality there is an order. You got to go in order. As someone told the previous Rebbe about teaching Hasidut, and he says to him, before you put on a tie, you better put on underwear. Imagine you tell someone here, put on a tie, and they don't even wear pants. It doesn't make sense. And the Rebbe told him, this is the story of the previous Rebbe, he told them, this is in an ordinary time. In an ordinary time, the way you get dressed, you cannot put a tie if you wear an undershirt and no shirt. But when there is a fire that's burning and you're trying to save whatever possession you have, then you put on whatever you can and run out. So that's when we encourage. And that's what exile is about. Says the Rebbe, in ordinary time, there are restrictions about studying Kabbalah. You first study the revealed part of the Torah, you study the Chumash, the Torah, you study the Mishnah, you study the Gemara, and now you want to discover another layer of Torah, you study Kabbalah. But in a state of dreams, in a time where two opposites can coexist, you need to take whatever is this you find and connect to God. So even if somebody, when I teach here Hasidut or Kabbalah, I ask people about basic texts in the Torah and they don't know. They're not aware. Last night we spoke about the creation of Adam. Some people had no clue about that. But yet they want to study Kabbalah. It should be encouraged because it's the time of Galut where you have two opposites, dichotomy, and they coexist. Because God's connection to us in exile is from a higher level, a higher state than ordinary, so that, as the Torah said, "Ashochen itam betoch tumatam," God is resting within our defilement, within our impurity. Therefore, we have the power to study and connect, even though a minute earlier we were very far, the opposite of God. That's the idea of dreams. That's why the introduction, the prelude to exile was dreams. Says the Rebbe that exile of Egypt is the introduction to all exiles and the harshest. And therefore, all other exiles are named after Egyptian exile because it's the harshest and the start. And therefore, everything else that happened, we are in the fourth exile now. It's called the Romans exile. And they are, so we have the same semblance, the same interaction with God like we had in Egypt. And therefore, we need to understand that no matter which way we can connect to God, we should not have any strings attached. You cannot say, well, I better be keeping Shabbat before I pray on Shabbat. I better be knowing Hebrew before I pray to God. I better be knowing all the prayer before I pray. We say no. You can put on tefillin, do it. You can light Shabbat candles, although unfortunately some people will violate Shabbat, but they should light Shabbat candles. Why? In exile, it is what's demanded of us. In the time of state of Geula, the time of Moshiach, there will be order. And before you study Kabbalah, they will say, hey, make sure you're clear and you understand the revealed part of the Torah. Make sure you study Mishnah and Gemara. But at the time of exile, in the state of dreams, this is what's demanded of us. And the Rebbe goes on to say that that's why Yosef was the first one who stepped to exile. He was the one who came ahead of everybody else many years earlier. The reason is because he was a holy man, and we needed to spread holiness to protect from the evil. That's why the names, he named his two sons, Gershom and, Ephraim and Menashe, which are all about living in exile amidst the defilement and impurity and remain loyal to God. And he gave the energy to the rest of the other families which were shepherds. Why were they shepherds? They wanted to separate themselves from the universe. The world is a contradiction to God. There is all kinds of temptations and all kinds of hardship. They were shepherds way far from humanity. Yosef is the only one who interacted with humanity and remained steadfast with his connection to God. He was the one who was sent to Egypt to enable them to arrive there and not learn from the Egyptian culture and be able to connect to God, which is what dreams are about. You have two opposites. And that's why for us, we need to encourage people to do mitzvot without checking to see, do they keep kosher? Do they keep Shabbat? Are they know what they pray? You just do whatever you can. And that's how that became a permanent relationship with God, where the evil is only temporary. Shabbat Shalom and happy Hanukkah, everybody.